Hi everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 246 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review, I'm going to be talking about an English rapper who has been around for a few years now in the 2010s, and is at the moment really making a mark for herself as one of the UK's best and most talented rappers out there. Of course, I'm talking about the MC known as Little Simz, and I'm doing things a little differently for this video. I don't own this album physically yet, but it is an album that I've been loving this year. Really wanted to do a review for it, so I'm here to talk about Little Simz's latest album, which came out on March 1st of 2019. The album is called Grey Area. This album is following up that 2017 album she put out. I don't remember what that was. Anyway, Grey Area is my first sort of exposure to Little Simz, and probably the first exposure for probably a lot of people at this point, but it's definitely one of my favorite rap albums of the year, and probably one of the first rap albums this year that I really kind of fell head over heels for. This album is probably the best UK hip-hop album I've heard in a while. Because, I have to be honest, UK hip-hop has never really caught my attention that much in the past, although there are definitely some very talented artists under that scene, like Skepta and Kano and people like that, but Little Simz is just taking the game to the next level here. In fact, this is definitely in my top 5 of the year so far. It's just such an excellent album, from her flow to her approach to songwriting and to the production, which does fuse together elements of jazz, elements of, hip-hop. There's also elements of jazz and funk and reggae, maybe even garage rock to be found on here too. The production is primarily handled by Inflow, who I think complements Simz's bars and delivery very well. The opening track on this album is called Offence, and right off the bat, Little Simz really does show off her personality big time and does not waste a second of this track. I love how she starts out the song with the line of, "Me again, allow me to pick up where I left off. The biggest phenomenon, and I'm Picasso with the pen." Really a very satisfying way to open up the song, sort of picking up where her last album left off. And also really like the live bass on there, incredible drumming on the track too, and love all the little weird instrumental curveballs that go on in the track, some really sexy flute solos, really beautiful strings, and then there will be all these cartoonish, kind of vocalized sounds that'll happen at certain points of the song, kind of like an ad-lib, and also really like how she sort of talks about how unimpressed she feels about some of the rappers who are top of the charts, not really, coherently expressing how they feel, and just, finding pleasure and venting all the time, and she just is the complete opposite of that and likes to sort of show off some personality and really be honest with what she does, which she most definitely does for pretty much all of Grey Area. And love the hook on this thing. The refrain is the really sort of intense refrain of, "I said it with my chest and I don't care who I defend. I mean, that is just fire. The next track, Boss, does actually have a little bit of a garage rock sort of tinge to it because of the kind of fuzzy bass and, of course, the live drumming again. The production on this track actually kind of reminds me of Jack White's latest solo album, Boarding House Reach. Reach a little bit, not just in terms of the distortion of Simz's vocals on the track and the bass and whatnot, but there's also some really kind of twisted keyboard playing at the end of the track that I think is really cool. It totally sounds like something White could totally produce. Uh, totally produce. And also some really incredible bars on this track too. Really like the line, "Haven't seen a show till you see me live. At 23, sold dreams to my side." And also really like the line of how she was inspired by Kanye West and how she learned how to, touch the sky, sort of learn from what he did musically to sort of get a start on his career, get a start on her career, and also a very sort of unapologetic and kind of in-your-face hook on the track. "I'm a boss in an effing dress. Homie, stay in line." The way that she says that, just, I totally feel that, for sure. And the next track, "Selfish," actually does take a nice little bit of a breather from sort of the aggression addressed on that song, and features some really beautiful jazzy pianos smattered all over the track, as well as a very gorgeous guest vocal from Cleo Soul. "I'm so selfish." I love that refrain. It's that refrain. And in the verses, Simz sort of talks about how it's really sort of gets it pretty in depth to some of her feelings a little bit, and kind of her dealings with depression and anxiety, and sort of, feeling selfish all the time, but somehow kind of feeling used to it and feeling kind of okay that, she's not perfect, and, she's just going to be kind of selfish sometimes. And definitely one of the best singles that teased for the album. I mean, just so full of soul and so beautiful. The next track, "Wounds," actually incorporates some reggae kind of sounds to it, with the guitar, along with the sort of the drumming. It kind of maintains that sort of beat too. Love the kind of dramatic and eerie strings on this instrumental too. They only add to the darkness and sort of goosebumps that a track like this induces. And to complete the whole equation, we have an appearance from Jamaican singer Chronixx on here, which I think delivers a very excellent performance. And Simz and Chronixx have great chemistry off of one another, and I actually would like to see maybe more collaborations by them. No, wait. They've collaborated before, I think, probably on their last album. Anyway, this song lyrically definitely is pretty dark. I mean, this is kind of a song about, how mental illness sort of leads people, innocent people, that just turn into these kind of cold-blooded murderers. In fact, this is kind of an album. This song is sort of, I think, targeted at some people who may have been responsible for hurting people with gun violence, and, are sort of, in jail for it. Sort of asking them, where do you get your gun from? So where do you get your gun from? And also sort of letting us know to kind of, shed a tear for the gunman and stuff like that. Like that. It's definitely a song that will bring goosebumps, both on surface level and if you dig a little deeper and actually find out its lyrical subject. The lyrical subject on this track actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the song Santeria off of Pusha T's Daytona a little bit. As I've listened to that song more, I've sort of found its lyrics to be that much more dark and affecting, as I found out kind of how murderous the track is. The song Venom features one of my favorite flows on the entire album from Simz. Some fantastic bars on there, though I will say this is actually my least favorite track on the album. I mean, Simz' delivery is fantastic. I do find the instrumental on this track maybe a little over-dramatic with the strings, and dramatic with the strings a little bit, And also, I think the song could be a tad longer too, and feels maybe a little one-dimensional instrumentally, though it's definitely not one-dimensional delivery-wise. So I just have kind of mixed feelings about this track. That's just me. The next track, 101 FM, features really catchy keyboard playing, along with some lyrics that sort of see Simz talking about a bit about her family and sort of, you know, sort of their perspective on her, and also sort of looking back to the days when she and Avelino, who I think is a producer, used to make tracks, and sort of talking about how they lived in the same damn flat. And also really like how she kind of quotes members of her family a little bit. For example, uh, like Simbi, where are you at? What have you done? Who are you with? With sort of showing that her family really thought about her a lot, and were really hoping that everything's going well with her. And she also sort of drops in some effortless sort of references to some rappers that have influenced her, like Busta Rhymes and the British rap legend Dizzy. And I thought it was some really clever satire to like close out the song with this sort of announcement, this little skit from what sounds like a UK radio host a little bit, saying, that was Little Simz, this is 101 FM, sort of showing that the song sort of feels as though it's playing off of a radio station a little bit, which I thought was a very clever concept. The next song, Pressure, is definitely another one that I have grown to really love. Love the kind of melancholy pianos on the track. The beat has a really nice sort of pace to it. It paces really well with her flow. Also some really catchy, sort of eerie, sort of ghost-like background vocal instrument flow. Na 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 na. East side, all around us. Like, it's really cool over that instrumental. Also really enjoyed Little Dragon's very soulful guest vocal at the end of the track. I think works really well with Simz's flow and the instrumental. Yeah. So, instrumental. And Simz does a very interesting thing in this track where she kind of switches her flow a little bit. Like, the flow that's, like, in the middle of the track is, like, pretty unforgettable. And that's a skill that, like, very few rappers can really nail. The track Therapy is one that also contains some of the punk and garage rock elements. There's some really good guitar playing and drumming on the track, as well as some kind of off-kilter keyboard playing. I think the Jack White comparison can also be found on this track. This track and the lyrics sort of talk about how she's like dealt with some mental health problems her whole life, and she's tried therapy like, most people with anxiety or depression would do, but, she just never really found it to really work for her. And she sort of talks about an experience she had before the first time she went to therapy. She goes to the bar, has a couple of drinks, forgets where she parked, and this is a song where she really does sort of spill the beans on some things that really do disinterest her. And also really love the sort of fiery hook on the track. Therapy. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks on here. But the vibes of this album and the lyrics only get sadder on the track Sherbet Sunset, which is kind of like psychedelic soul almost, has a really good slapped bass line on it. Um, excuse me. Like really one of the best bass lines on the entire album. Um, your album, and this is a song where Simz is sort of talking about her dealings with depression and how she's sort of in the process of a relationship that's kind of coming to an end. And there's some memorable bars to like show off those emotions. Yeah, and like speaking of relationships, I really like how she ends the song "Therapy" with sort of saying that, maybe I should just move on with my life and have kids, and if my daughter is anything like me, I'm raising the king. Like back to this track, which is definitely the most sort of more sort of melancholy track on the entire album. Great instrumentation on this track. Really like the kind of somber guitars and strings, as well as inflows, very soulful background vocals. And this is definitely a pretty complex journey into Simz's emotions. The closing track, "Flowers," is a song that features definitely one of my favorite instrumentals on this album. So gorgeous, so jazzy, like the syrupy background vocals, the very kind of mournful trumpets, the piano, and the drumming. It's just like it all blends so well with Simz's voice, as well as the guest vocal from Michael Kiwanuka. I definitely think To Pimp a Butterfly fans would most certainly enjoy this album because of that sort of instrumental, and Simz sort of talks about how even though she's got issues in her life, she's still like doing all she can to like really be successful in this life and with her career. It's sort of trying to press on. So it makes total sense that the hook, which is sung by Michael Kiwanuka, sort of tells her, "You already won, flowers all for you," which she sings in a very soulful way, like flowers all for you, it's definitely turned into one of my favorite tracks on the entire album, and definitely a very worthy way to close this incredible album. Yeah, Gray Area is a great album, as you could tell from how positive most of what I've said is. I really don't have a lot in the way of complaints about this album. It's likely going to be pretty high on my favorites of the year list. Very high on my favorites of the year list, and I also want to mention one of my favorite parts of the song "Pressure" is where she talks about how she would do anything to really be successful in her life or career, and not so much in the way of like money, but like really like living a fulfilling life, life. I mean, her delivery on here is pretty much flawless. The production overall is very good and complements the delivery very well. The features are great. Really like how all the features on here are guest singers, as she's the one rapper who doesn't really need a bunch of guest rappers necessarily to really shine through. So I'm definitely going with a strong 9 out of 10 on this new album by Little Simz called Gray Area. I'll see you for episode 247.